Oh, hello there, and welcome to Dungeon Bits, where we're going to be filling your cackle sacks to the brim with scary stuffs for your spooky little month. Yes, it's October. I love Halloween, I love horror, I love dressing up as literally anyone but myself. And I love TTRPGs. I mean, do you like it? I even came in a costume. They kicked me out the Halloween store for it, but still. Last October, I can't believe I've been doing this for more than a year, I covered how to make tabletop games scary, running over the kinds of horror that you can employ in your sessions. But in today's video, I want to walk through some great systems for your spooky games. I asked about what kind of videos you want to see for this spooky month, and I saw a request to cover spooky one-shots for Halloween, but I'm not going to be running through D&D content today. I'm going to be showing you something new. We can survive without just playing D&D, trust me. I'm going to run through these games in a way so that their themes loosely blend into one another. So, why don't you relax as we uncover some of the best spooky tabletop RPGs. First, I have to start with a classic, Call of Cthulhu by Chaosium. Most people know this TTRPG, if not the story that it's based off, so I'm going to be pretty brief. I've always said that the game is surprisingly easy to play, both as a player and a keeper of arcane lore. You roll a d100 and try to roll under your skills, and the hardest part of the game is really whether you already know a bunch about the 1920s. Otherwise, you got a lot of reading to do. Oh yeah, and your character can go insane! And there are a bunch of great mystery modules to choose from if you want to run this game. However, the plot for the Edge of Darkness onboards the players in the most exquisitely unique way I've ever seen, and immediately drops your players in a dire situation. I don't want to spoil it, so you gotta find out for yourself. Also, as you can probably tell, the game is based off the mythos of H.P. Lovecraft, and if you can't separate the man from what he created, then this game is probably not gonna appeal to you, but it appeals to me because I like the cosmic horror aspect, not necessarily his thoughts about very real things. I mean, I like, Edge of Darkness and Evil Dead, you might be able to see back there, and of course, Gary, move your sexy pelvis. I've got the complete fiction of H.P. Lovecraft back there. I'm a fan, so you might be a fan too, and if you do, the game marries the mythos with fantastic gameplay that you can use to really scare your players. I absolutely recommend this game. Pick it up. Cosmic, horror, and sci-fi obviously live in the same house, eating the same free-dried ice cream sandwiches, so it's no wonder why I'm recommending the Alien RPG by Free League next. This sci-fi horror game is based off the IP of the same name, but it really surprised me. It's got a d6 dice pool mechanic where you try to roll at least 1 6 to succeed, an act that gets harder and harder as your character gets more tense and gains stress dice to make rolls harder. When I first saw this, I thought, is this game just going to be you replaying the plots of the movies? But instead, the modules that Free League have given us are fantastic and contain unique surprises for those that are a fan of the IP or just like horror TTRPGs. You'll find mysteries among the stars and a lot of spaceships to explore and of course, devious corporate schemes to uncover. My favourite. The game also gives your characters agendas and wants in a story act-like structure, making each session feel like a movie of your very own, a very unique way to guide your players and the story. If you like mysteries where you uncover what awful thing happened here, then pick up this game, and the scenario, Chariot of the Gods. If you want a sci-fi horror game with alien monsters, but one that's not attached to a fixed IP, then I'd highly recommend the award-winning Mothership by Tuesday Night Games. A fantastically laid out, simple to play but hard to survive sci-fi horror game with a dice mechanic that has you add a relevant stat to a skill and try to roll under the result. You'll find classes to give you a purpose in your group as you try to survive the horrors of outer space. It's a loving homage to fiction like the Alien films without being attached to the IP, allowing for your players to really get into it without expecting a xenomorph trademark. It also has a session act set up to help guides keep the flow of the game in sync with the usual flow of these horror films that we're used to. A flow that usually ends with a tragic or terrifying ending. And no better is this encapsulated than with Death in Space by the Stockholm Cartel. And published by Free League, again, made by the Mork Borg peeps, and I don't know if you can see Mork Borg back there behind Yorick, but it's not explicitly set out to be a horror game. However, it's packed to the gills with excellent content to help you run a sci-fi setting drenched in brutal hopelessness. Its horror lies more in the oppressive weight of dread as you explore and try to survive in a deadly, harsh, and comparatively grounded space setting compared to other sci-fi worlds. And yes, I'm certainly going out on a limb with the whole horror TTRPG setup, but it will spawn very different but very personal forms of horror that deal with the unforgiving vacuum, a place where you are an alien. As we ventured from space to a more grounded space, let's go to the ground with Mork Borg by the same folks. Again, not technically a horror game, but it can easily be used to encapsulate the horror of a harsh world, as you can only do so much to survive and fight back. And the world is ending in that setting, and if you look inside the book and all of its content, you will see that yes, it's very horrible, that could easily be used to scare. I guess you could use Cyborg, but honestly it's more bombastic fun, and it would take a very skilled GM to turn that game into a genuinely terrifying experience. If you're looking for something to fit the Halloween spooks rather than actually terrifying your players, then look up Kill Your Necromancer by Hetlung Storytelling to play as an undead trying to... You get it. Alternatively, if your players would like to have a spooky seafaring time, try Pirate Borg. If you would like the Pirates of the Caribbean style dark magic fantasy stuff, then you could explore the inky void of the thalassophobic sea rather than the stars above. Since we've kinda nestled into a more fantastical rhythm, I highly recommend Heart, The City Beneath. Heart is a game that when I picked it up, I was thoroughly blown away by, made by Christopher Taylor and Grant Howitt? Wait, the guy that made Honey Heist? Actually, you know what? That makes complete sense. The whole game is essentially a dungeon crawl, but one where your characters are on a one-way trip to find the source of an otherworldly eldritch force known as the Heart. On the way, you'll encounter many dangers and troubles and grotesque horrors, but your characters don't play in the D&D powers and roles and hit points arrangement. Instead, your characters have classes, but in a very unique and flavourful way that you honestly just have to read to see for yourself. Look for the guys that are into bees. I love them with all my heart. You have abilities of different levels that when employed don't act like very simple cast spell, deal damage sort of mold, and instead are more like story beats that you employ yourself as a player. This system has everyone push and scrape through the grim underground while painting this tale of self-sacrifice together, ending with very cool zenith abilities to finish off your character and give them a glorious or fittingly disturbing end. Do yourself a favour and pick up this game. Treat yourself. Speaking of treating yourself to a fantastic game, if you want to play in a group seeking out supernatural beings, but with less of a grim self-destruction route, then pick up Vaesen by Free League Games. Again, Vaesen is a Nordic folklore horror TTRPG set in an alternate 19th century with folkloric beings mixed in. A problem with combat TTRPGs is that they instill this confidence in the players to be in control, which kills horror. So, Vaesen has you take a different approach to combating folklore horrors by engaging with their folkloric weaknesses instead of just drawing guns and swords. And by the way, you can still engage in combat as each Vaesen has its own rules for how it can hurt you in combat, but the essence of playing against these forms of monsters, rather than aliens and spooky dungeon crawlies, is the unique nature in which you beat them, having you conducting arcane rituals and learning how to banish each Vaesen. For example, mermaids. Who doesn't love mermaids, right? Well, that's kind of the problem. With her beauty and song, she can charm and beguile you, but they hate metal, so you can break being controlled by one if your flesh touches steel. And let me never forget, one way that you can deal with one is if she's enamored by you, you can actually marry her in a church and put a ring on it for real. I highly recommend that you check this game out to see the rest of these awesome Vaesen and their unique ways to spook your players at the game table. Also, the same artist as Dragonbane is in this, so it looks gorgeous. As Vaesen moved us to a more modern setting, let's check out Shiver by Parable Games. I say more modern setting, but Shiver is a setting neutral horror game that lets you run and play in any horror setting you want, be it historical or sci-fi future stuff. It has class-like approaches to player characters to help you fit any setting while getting to be uniquely useful in the game's mechanics, and a doom clock mechanic to ensure that the tension never dies. Shiver doesn't give restrictions on the setting, it lets you play in anything, but despite that freedom, Shiver does have its own dice to play with, but these last two games certainly stand out for the new ways to play at the table, not just dice or your own dice, starting with Dread, published by The Impossible Dream. That's their name. Dread is another setting-agnostic horror game, but unlike other games, Dread builds tension at the table by literally having you build tension at the table. And that's because Dread doesn't use dice. Instead, you play as characters going about your usual spooky horror times, but if you want to do anything that carries a risk of failure, you have to pull a block from a Jenga tower. Yes, this game has you play Jenga, or I guess any legally distinct Jenga game, as you explore a tense and scary experience. This ensures that your character and you are terrified to act, on the risk that you have to make a pull and risk the tower toppling over, at which point your character is removed from the game. Or dies. The Dread Jenga mechanic is certainly unique in the TTRPG space, but for a game to weave traditional and unique mechanics into a simple to play but spooky game, then play 10 Candles by Cavalry Games. You know how if you ask anyone online how do you run a spooky game, and their advice is always that you need darkness and spooky music to have a chance of scaring your players? Well, this game asks that you actually light candles and play in a tense and tragic apocalyptic style game where the sun has gone out and they lurk in the dark. The titular 10 Candles represents the 10 scenes that you have to play the session. You play by rolling a pool of d6s, trying to roll a 6 to succeed, and if you roll any 1s, then any dice that rolled a 1 are removed from the pool until the next scene. But if you roll no 6s, you snuff out one of the 10 candles. The candle goes out, and the scene ends. Playing this in the dark would be a very real experience. Your characters are just trying to survive in this darkened world that is slowly ending. But as the game goes on, as tension builds, as you have more mysterious run-ins with them, the room darkens, as more candles go out, and the glimmers of hope die with them. So there we have it, a plethora of genuinely artful, fun, spooky and terrifying games to run either this Halloween, or if your table just loves to try out new, beautifully made, but terrifying games. Thank you for watching, I'm Ellis, and if you liked this video, click the one on screen to see how you can create your own mysteries from scratch. It's not as impossible as it sounds. I love you all, and I'll see you next Saturday. Boo!